Welcome to the Gentleman's Guide to Vampires. In this video we shall examine Clan Lasombra, the clan of night, the clan of shadows, the clan of keepers. What can be said of Clan Lasombra? Well, they are, arguably, the most powerful clan in the night. That's no small boast. The Bruar have the numbers, the Gangrel have the wild on their side, the Ventru own their corporations, and the Toreador can make art of anything. The Zenisi have the ability to craft flesh itself, and the Sethites have a god on their side. So what is it that makes the Lasombra the most powerful clan of the night? Well, vampires can only come out at night, and the Lasombra wield the night like a weapon. Obtenebration, the manipulation of the blackness, the shadow stuff, the darkness. You could say evil, but I think that would be putting too much of a human concept on void, nothingness. The Lasombra are capable of making vampires afraid of the dark, which is something quite worrying for every vampire of every other clan should they pause to give it any thought. That does not say that the Lasombra are respected. They are certainly feared. They are certainly disliked. They are disliked by the Camarilla. They are disliked intensely by the Camarilla. Well, they are disliked almost as intensely by the Anarchs. And they aren't particularly well liked in the Sabbat. For most, of the Zenisi and the anti-tribu clans therein believe that they are posturing aristocrats. And the Anarchs believe they are monsters. And the Camarilla believes that they are going around breaching masquerades, hunting creatures that don't even exist. These antediluvians. How foolish then of the Camarilla, the Anarchs and the Sabbat, for it is the Lasombra that are the most strong proponents of all three sects. The Lasombra anti-tribu that dwell in the Camarilla, they are aware that there's something out there in the dark, just as the Nosferatu are aware of their Niktsuku, and the Lasombra the Lasombra anti-tribu desperately want to uphold the masquerade because it's the only thing keeping the darkness away from them. They fiercely protect the Camarilla. The Lasombra within the Anarchs. Why is it that the Anarchs hate them so much when it was the Lasombra that all but led the Anarch revolt, that led to the destruction of the Lasombra antediluvian, or so they say, and the Zenisi antediluvian? The Sabbat, why would they hate the Lasombra when it is the Lasombra that keep the sect together? While the Zenisi busy themselves with playing with themselves, it is the Lasombra that keep the organisation together politically, through sheer brute force and dominance at times, but otherwise they are the only stable minds that are there. They are the ones capable of performing the mass embraces. They are the ones that light the ritual fires. They are the ones fueling the crusade, the sword of Cain. The Lasombra are the doers. In the Dark Ages, the Lasombra were aristocrats, certainly. Very much on a par with the Ventru, you could argue, but with a bit more intelligence behind their design. They had their dark tentacles entwined with the Catholic Church, or so it is said, but they were also heavily entwined with Islam and the Moors. The Lasombra knew how to manipulate, they still do. Sometimes, obviously, sometimes not. But the Lasombra back then were a threat that could perhaps be understood. The Ventru used the kings of Europe as their weapons, their armies. The Lasombra used the church and the great weight that the church held as their hammer to strike against against the other clans during the War of Princes. And what a blow it caused. And the thing is, if the Lasombra weren't so disparate, if one half wasn't so heavily in bed with the Catholics and the other wasn't so heavily in bed with the Muslims, the crusade may have well gone a different way, but the crusades went as the crusades went. The Lasombra were, of course, in a very interesting position during the Dark Ages in that they had an antediluvian, Lasombra himself, for he does not go by any name understood by human tongue or ear, was quite often awake and supposedly researching. Few could tell you what Lasombra was researching except for his child, a Gratiano, a Montano. But in Castel d'Ombro in the Mediterranean, this castle of mirrors and shadows, it is said that Lasombra was peering into the abyss. It said that Lasombra was capable of wielding the abyss. This is not some Dungeons and Dragons abyss populated by demons, by Tanari. This is entropy, void, something that the human mind cannot comprehend. If there is any cosmic horror in the world of darkness, it is wielded by the fingertips of Clan Lasombra, due to the machinations of their clan founder. He wanted power. He was drawn to the deepest oceans. And this is why the Lasombra have such an affinity to the water. Many a time is a Lasombra inexorably drawn to setting sail, becoming a corsair, a pirate, for some reason, with a crew of a herd of blood dolls. For some reason, the Lasombra feel this draw to lightless environment. Certainly they are weaker in the light than most other vampires. Certainly they cast no reflection, which makes it strange that the Lasombra himself would construct a castle of mirrors. But it can be said that he could identify any child of any other clan that wasn't his own, for they would cast a reflection. The Lasombra was said to occasionally wade out into the Mediterranean and, according to Montano, would be gone for years at a time, walking along the seabed, exploring the darkest reaches of this planet, that humans have never even thought of visiting. I mean, what could be down there? What alien mysteries could be down there? And yet every time Lasombra re-emerged, he was more powerful. What was he feeding on? What was it that was making him more murderous, more intent on his goals that was so alien, so impossible to understand by his childer? Perhaps we will never know, for the Anarch Revolt came along, and the Lasombra, being as they are users of folk, complete dominators of the kine, they were certainly responsible for the rebellions of the Anarch Revolt. Their neonates were tired of being thrown against the walls of opposing kingdoms without so much as a by your leave. They formed the Anarch Revolt and they struck against their founder, being led by his own child Gratiano. That is now said Gratiano was embraced for specifically this purpose. For when Lasombra was diablerized, if indeed diablerized he was not a being that resembled anything human. He was something entirely black, entirely colourless, no features, no contours, nothing that could be quite explained. Gratiano fell upon him with other members of the revolt, and Gratiano was the only one that emerged. He disappeared soon after. But that is how the Sabbat was formed. The Sabbat was not formed by Tzimisce following in Lasombra's footsteps. Clan Lasombra were the ones to finally decide, no, the antediluvians will destroy us all in their quest to dominate whatever is in front of them, behind them and around them. The Lasombra have always been masters of their own destiny, or so they think, and so that is why they struck against their antediluvian, and that is why other vampires decided to do the same thing. Well, that is what the Lasombra would tell you. After all, they are very full of their own ego, they are fully aware of their own power, and they flaunt it. The Lasombra would not do well in the Camarilla. It is amazing that any anti-tribu exist in the small numbers that they do, simply because obtenebration is not some subtle discipline. As I have pointed out before, their ability to wield shadow stuff. They are not just casting shadows, they are not just hiding in the dark like the Nosferatu, they are wielding blackness. They are wielding darkness. They are making vampires afraid of the dark, because they can make the shadows come out and devour you, and you will never be seen again. They can do this to mortals, they can do this to vampires. They can step into a shadow and come out of another one on the other side of the room. This is not some subtle obfuscation, not some prancing presence. The Lasombra are all about hitting their enemies hard so that they know their place. This is why they dominate and do not use their presence. This is why they obtenebrate and do not use something so pathetic as obfuscation. This is why they use their potence, instead of just taking the blows like the Ventru with their fortitude. The Lasombra do not feel they need to be afraid, they do not need to take blows, they deliver blows like a hammer. And each time they hit their enemies, they crumple, and the Lasombra may not have the unity of other clans. They are split into many different factions. You have the Crusaders, you have your Angelus Atir, who are, you could argue, devil-worshipping Lasombra, who are quite accepted by the vast majority of the Catholic members of the clan. You have your Corsairs, of course. The Lasombra have many sects within their clan, and that is where they are at their weakest. They are not unified. Every Lasombra feels he is the most powerful vampire. He is the most intelligent vampire, he is the most useful. He can be the one that gets things done. There is some great hubris among the clan that is not unfamiliar to the one that is shared with Ventru and Tremere. I believe it is something that comes with being capable of dominating someone with your eyes and your words. The Lasombra believe that they can dominate all. Kine, kindred, Cainite. Both. They do not fear other vampires. They do not fear their compatriots in the Sabbat. They are masters of the night, and they are very quick to remind you of the fact. But don't expect to walk away from the lesson, it being learned. They would much rather use you as an example to other, younger vampires that could learn through your sacrifice. It is known that there have been more Priscus of the Sabbat and more regents of the Sabbat of Clan Lasombra than any other vampire. It is because they are capable of leading a fragmented sect such as the Sabbat into destroying the antediluvians and eventually dominating all of mankind and making them their blood slaves. And the Lasombra want nothing more than to feel vindicated in their ambitions. It is perhaps ironic that in destroying Lasombra himself, this great, vast blackness that was their clan founder, who wanted to dominate all with his abyssal mysticism, that they are now doing the exact same thing 500 years later. Perhaps through their lack of unification, they will be destroyed by a new wave of Lasombra, but they will always retain their power. They will never be weak. They will always be the most frightening vampires that dwell outside the borders of the masquerade. Thank you very much for watching.